Mr. Antonucci here. In this video, we're going to talk about some tips for success as we jump into Unit 5, Analytical Applications of Derivatives. Now, in this unit, we shift from what a derivative is to how we can use it to analyze functions. Now, this is really the heart of calculus, being able to understand the behavior of functions using derivatives. So with this focus of analysis of functions using derivatives, we're going to investigate increasing and decreasing functions and their intervals, talking about extrema, maxes, and mins, and talking about the distinction between absolute max, absolute min, and relative mins. We'll discuss more precise understandings of concavity and two very important theorems, the extreme value theorem and mean value theorem. They're two of the big three theorems in AP calculus. We'll also talk about how to connect the graphs of f with f prime and f double prime and go back and forth in between each of those, as well as dive into some optimization problems. Now, I have 4 tips that I want to share with you to set you up for success in this unit. The first is practice precision. When you're doing problems and you're taking this analytical approach to derivatives and functions, make sure your work is thorough, you're using proper notation, and the work is neatly organized and you have precision to your answers. This is going to greatly help graders as they're grading your work, whether it's a teacher or AP exam grader, or even looking back through your own work. The second tip is to justify justly. When we're dealing with free response questions, oftentimes they're going to ask you to justify your response. Now, we're going to be covering those two big theorems, extreme value theorem and mean value theorem. There are conditions that must be satisfied to use the theorem, and there are also conclusions that result if those conditions are satisfied. You must be able to include this full justification in your response. So not just the what, but the why behind it. Know the conditions for the theorems. And again, this is a major opportunity for points on free response questions. Third is to optimize optimally. One of the things that we're going to cover in this unit is optimization problems. These problems have a context, and so the domain is going to matter. Does the domain make sense? Oftentimes we'll have a function that models the situation, and the domain of that function is oftentimes larger than the domain that makes sense in the problem. So the context matters. We're going to be having to justify answers for optimization problems. If it asks you to find the max volume or the min volume, you can't just report a number. You have to be able to justify using the analytical approaches we'll talk about in this unit. And also, units matter. Again, optimization problems have a context, so the units will matter greatly on your answers there. And the fourth tip is distinguish derivatives. Now that we know about the original function, the first derivative, and the second derivative, we're going to go back and forth in between each of those. So it's very, very important that when you have a problem presented to you, you understand which graph is given, if it gives you a graph, whether it's the original function, first or second derivative, if it's a function, if it's information about a function, if it's a table of values. Make sure you understand which function they're talking about and which function they're asking you questions about. Lots of times they could give you the graph of the original function and ask you questions about the derivative or second derivative. They could give you a table of values for the first derivative and ask you questions about the second derivative or the original function, or any combination of those. The topics from the first half of this unit are going to be essential here for understanding how to be successful when analyzing graphs of functions. So those are my tips for Unit 5, Analytical Applications of Derivatives. The key takeaways: practice precision, justify justly, optimize optimally, and distinguish derivatives. I hope that was helpful to you and insightful and sets you up for success as you start Unit 5. If this video was helpful to you, please give it a like. Make sure you let me know in the comments, and also subscribe to the channel. I'll be releasing more and more and more AP Calc videos.